Hi, and welcome to Wattwatchers training manual brought to you by Wattblock. So Wattwatchers is a high-grade utility electricity monitoring device for a number of different applications, but it can be installed into residential apartment buildings. So we've developed this training manual to help residential apartment buildings that may be thinking of installing or have installed their Wattwatchers electricity monitoring device. Once it's set up, you'll have a web screen that you can log into like this. And there's a number of different features on the screen. You can change the time scale at number 5. You can change consumption and circuits at number 6. And you can export data with 8, and you can add annotations onto the data using 9. So a couple of items that you can see on the main dashboard after the device has been installed on either your common area electricity circuit or perhaps the aggregate of all the apartment building circuit in your building, or a particular circuit which has equipment on it. So the download function, you can download the data as a graph in a number of different picture formats. You can download the consumption data in a number of different spreadsheet formats for further analysis, and Annotate allows you to draw notes on the graph before saving it as an image. By clicking on the Circuits tab, you can see each phase that's monitored. So it's attached to a 3-phase circuit. You'll see a different line in a different color for each of the phases. If you've got an order to 6 Wattwatchers device, you can have up to 6 phases on this one graph. In this particular building, they've only used 3 of the phases, so you only see 3 lines on the graph. You can change the time scale, and see, in this case, the last 30 days of data, and you can identify usage patterns. So we've got some annotations here. Different times you've got spikes, and these were later identified to be car park fans. One of the background items to use a Wattwatchers device effectively is you need to know how to interpret a load profile. Here we've got a typical load profile for a common area meter in a residential apartment building. And you can see we call these two things the bunny ears. This is the pie chart of the breakdown of consumption over the course of a year for that same building. So you can see what's operating in this building. So there's usually 2 different types of load in the building. There's base load, which is fairly constant. They may be lights that are on all the time, standby power on the lifts, etc., for lifts that are on all the time, fans that are running 24/7. And then you've got variable load, and that sits above the base load, and that's responsible for creating the more interesting parts of the load profile graph. Here's a building. We'll build it up. You can see that the base load in this building is just lighting, and then the car park fans, which are on a timer, create those interesting spikes, 2 times a day when they're set to run. We can also see that in between, you've got some variable load, such as the lifts. So here's a little bit more information on interpreting a load profile. This is an example of a building that used to have car park ventilation systems operating on a timer, and then they retrofitted carbon monoxide sensors onto that car park fan, and you can see the same load profile after the fitting of the sensors. So it's not running as consistently in the same periods of time, and it's running less. Here's an example where annual fire compliance testing was done, and the car park ventilation fan was set to a fire testing mode. But when the fire compliance people left the building, they didn't reset the car park ventilation system back to its normal mode. So it continued to run for a couple of weeks, costing the building $100 extra per day until it was identified and then rectified. And you can see the load profile going back to normal after that. So here's a building that has a heated pool, and also the heating of the pool is different in the wintertime from the summertime. But here's some nighttime pool heating. Here's a little bit of booster pool heating during the middle of the day, and back to nighttime pool heating. And then if you've got a commercial strata building, one of the interesting things is air conditioning drives the load profile. And if the air conditioning is not set to run the same on weekends, you can actually see quite a difference, between the load profile of the building during business days and weekend days. And similarly, peak demand in summer for air conditioning can be quite high, but the winter load profile might be much lower. So another use of a Wattwatchers monitoring device is to show the impact of electric vehicle charging on a building. And you can see on the left a load profile with peak demand from electric vehicle charging, which is not managed. And on the right, you can see EV charging with a power management system or load balancing system in place. So this is a load profile of a building that's replaced their common gas hot water system with an electric heat pump system for a common hot water plant. And basically, you can see some overnight water heating here, and a morning peak after people have showers and go off to work. The heat pumps are working harder. And then an evening peak after people have had their showers at night time, the heat pumps working harder to build up that repository of water and get it ready for the morning rush. Here's an example of a load profile that shows solar output during the day. And that's based on the solar analytics software that sits on top of the Wattwatchers monitoring device. And here's a load profile of the common areas of an apartment building that has a 25 kilowatt solar system. It's got two Wattwatchers devices. The one that we're looking at the output here is the Wattwatchers device that is on the common area meter. And you can see that during the middle of the day, the amount of kilowatts consumed off the common area meter actually goes negative, and that's because the solar system is feeding into the grid. So I hope you've enjoyed Wattwatchers training for residential strata apartment buildings. Thank you.